Okay, good afternoon and welcome to our final session for the reflective week. And this session focuses on creating your e-portfolio. We are certainly excited by the opportunities that this is going to present to us today from the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. We have a number of members in our team here today, and we have Dr. Justin Zephyrin, we have Mr. Javed Mohammed, Mr. Mark Garcia, Mr. Randy Doku are with us. They are from the CETL team, and so we're certainly happy that we are here. While we are here, we just want to do a quick call, and this is a special call because we certainly want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we are looking forward to reaching that 100 mark. We are very short away from it, so if all 36 of you can do that duty for us, that needful, we're going to post the link in the chat in a while, and so if each of you would do that, then we will meet our goal today. Today we will. So the link is in the chat room. So this is our YouTube link, and what happens here is that whenever we finish a session, we'll post it to YouTube, and if you subscribe, you will get notification of our recent posts and recordings. All right, we've had a very interesting week, very interesting week, and those of you who were here, I don't know how you would describe it. I really don't know how you describe it, but if you were asked to give in two words or less. I'm not going to say 3 words, in 2 words or less. How would you have described the week thus far for you? This is what I was asking those who were here. I wanted to call some names. And so if you were here already, you've been with us, you know that we had a number of sessions during this week. And very informative. Camille is saying very informative. So another persons to give you 2 words. Lively. Robert is saying lively, fantastic, insightful. Wow. Darren is saying insightful. In the chat, let's see the chat going. Let's see the chat. Okay, thought provoking. That's Kathy's 2 words. Thought provoking. Let's get some more. Let's get the chat blazing, as they would say. Let's get a self-developing. I like that one, Marcy. I like that one. I love that one. You know, if I could do a heart emoji, you know, like and love, I would give this one a love one. Skill developing. Very good. And so certainly we are really happy that we had an opportunity to this week. I'm just going to go through it quickly because I want to get out of the way so you can actually get onto the main speakers of the day. We had a very inspiring, enlightening, thought-provoking, skill-developing, insightful week. Enlightening because we learned so much about reflection and how reflection is used to ground our practice as within a practice. We began by looking at the session from Dr. Diane Thorab-Nkosi, who spoke about action research, but reflection playing a central role in that. And, you know, the whole idea of intervention and intervening for change and the transformation that brings in terms of the enduring impact of it. And then we had Dr. Marjorie Jamieson-Charles spoke about peer observation. And that was really inspiring because it provided an output for us to see that that we can also invite peers in our classroom, and we can invite them to give us a different perspective. And this is what we certainly want to do because you want to have multiple lenses, multiple perspective. And the peer, your peers actually provide a very useful means of being able to ground your professional development, or what do you want to do differently. And I am in the room with us today is Mr. Mark Garcia, who actually did an excellent job in analyzing student results. This day obviously focused on the student lens in terms of us as practitioners valuing, being intentional about using the data-driven approach in using that to actually improve the practice, improve the teaching and learning experience, improving the student experience. It's about the student experience. It's about being able to meet the needs of our clients or the students in which we serve. And then we had a very a different session, which was what we call the UE Cafe. And in that session, we actually looked at a different set of faculty who were reflecting on, and their way of reflecting was by sharing these tools. This is how I teach this, and this particular tool or this particular approach. We had quite a wide array of persons who gave of themselves in a very meaningful way. I'll just give you a quick run view of those who actually gave in those sessions. So we had 6 tables, and out of those 6 tables, we had a wide array of number of topics that they looked at, and we were very, very much happy that they were able to address those various things. So the reflective week today really looks at creating your ePortfolio. You know, as practitioners, we want to ensure that you develop the overarching artifact that actually sells you or promotes you as an individual. And today we have, you know, at the end of this, you will get the idea of developing your skills of how do I go about creating my ePortfolio, and how it should be structured, how it should it look, what are some of the components, and then you will also have some technology enhanced support through our e-learning support specialist, Mr. Javed Muhammad. I'm speaking so much, so I'm going to get out of the way. So let me just quickly introduce Dr. Zephyrin. Dr. Zephyrin is our faculty development specialist, and he's been over 25 years in teaching, obviously spanning primary, secondary, tertiary institutions, but he has degrees from Darwin College, Johns Hopkins, Harvard Business School, and he previously held the substantive role of e-learning support specialist here at CETL, which supports and trains faculty and provide a number of professional development, both internally and externally. And so we are really privileged to have Dr. Zephyrin moderate this session for us today. He is being supported again by Marcia Nathia Bankisoon. I hope I pronounced that correct. And also Mr. Javed Muhammad. All right, and Javed Muhammad is our newest member of CETL and member of the team. And he's e-learning support specialist. He's an educational technologist with more than 10 years experience in the university environment. He believes that learning is meaningful when learners are actively engaged. So today you're going to see some of his strategies that he's going to use to engage you. And certainly so we want to see how we are able to meet in it. So let me talk less, and I'm just going to turn over to Dr. Zephyrin, who will do the rest of the introductions.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Great, excellent. So welcome to today's session, Creating Your Teaching ePortfolio. And as Dr. Hill rightfully said, it's a joint effort. We have, along with myself, we have Dr. Marsha Nathai Balkisoon. Dr. Balkisoon is a lecturer at the Faculty of Social Sciences and the Faculty of Engineering. And she's also a past, she's a recipient of the UE Guardian Group Teaching Awards. I can't remember what year in particular right now, but she is no stranger to the CETL. And so it's a pleasure to have her here. So she will be, you know, co-facilitating this session as well. And later on, we're going to have Mr. Javed Muhammad, who will also shed some light on the second half of this session. So just to give you a quick rundown on what this session is, it's going to be very hands-on. As many of you might know, I like to have hands-on sessions, and so you're going to have to do a lot of things. We're going to laugh, we're going to, you know, have a good time. But there are some things that we need to cover. So we're going to look at, the components of a teaching portfolio. We're going to, by the end of the session, also have some sort of rough draft of a teaching philosophy. I see we have many of the CETL students here who I guess to some extent you might have an advantage because your teaching philosophy is probably still taking shape, but we'll get to that. A teaching philosophy is something that is always evolving. We also have some past CETL students here as well, so that's good. We will also look at different items that we can incorporate into your ePortfolio. And then, of course, creating a page, at least, to get you started. This whole session is geared towards getting you started and creating your ePortfolio, and to really have some sort of direction and even as you build and you continue to build your ePortfolio. All right, so we're going to look at the first half. We'll focus on the tenets of your ePortfolio. So your teaching philosophy, the content that would comprise your ePortfolio. And then part two, we're going to get you started in building your ePortfolio, getting some tips on how to build it, the layout of it, the look and feel, those sorts of things. So some things that you will need, because remember it's a hands-on session. So, and because we have such a large number, we wanted to take a different approach to this. And in the spirit of reflective practice, of course, we're going to reflect on it and see if it was, to what extent was it impactful. So what I need you to do, if you haven't done so already, if you can just get a pen or pencil and paper, just to make some notes, because we're going to have some activities along the way, that you would just need to make some notes and jot down some points that you might need to remember as you go forward in creating your ePortfolio. All right, so that will be very, very helpful. So I recommend that, even if it's, yes, you might have a Word document up, but you mightn't want to be shifting between that Word document and the session. All right, so if you have just do a hard copy for now, and that's perfectly fine. The next thing, you want to make sure you have access to your Gmail or Google account. All right, if you haven't done so yet, you could just pull up a browser, Google Chrome or something, and make sure you have access to your Gmail account. All right, so that is going to help you flow smoothly throughout this entire session. All right, so I'll give you just about 10 seconds just to kind of get those things settled, and then we can go straight ahead. All right, we're very excited for this session. I think it's going to be insightful. Hopefully it will be, and enjoyable at the same time. So let's get straight into it. So when we think of reflective practice, we've been talking about it for this entire week. We have some of the things we looked at with different models of reflective practice. And we also looked at the different lenses or perspectives or angles that you could look at at your reflective practice. We have the what, so what, and now what. So when you think of it, we're thinking of, okay, what are what is it that you're reflecting on? What is the phenomenon? What is is it a particular new activity or new approach that you incorporated, that you tried in your class? And to what extent was it effective or impactful? And then what is the next course of action? Yeah. So Ralph's model is just one of several models of reflective practice. And I know we have Mr. Garcia in the chat, so he could definitely chime in here as well in the chat, or if you want to use your mic as well, Mark, feel free. But yes, so we have this model on reflective practice, and it's really about identifying what teaching practice or technique or strategy or activity you may have incorporated, or what new thing you did in your teaching practice, the impact of it, and then what's your course of action. Yeah. And then you have different angles of reflective practice. So you might reflect on yourself, your perspective, What do I think of my teaching practice? What do I think of my delivery? Then you have what your students think. The students' lens or angle. What do my students say? What is the feedback that you got from your students? Of course, you already know that the course review, course evaluation, course experience review, formerly known as CETL, is tantamount to this process. Then you have what your colleagues say about you, about your practice. And I think we explored that in Tuesday's session with peer observation and that sort of thing. So reflective practice is something that is multifaceted and it's ongoing, yeah? And all of this feeds into what we call your ePortfolio, your teaching portfolio. Now, yes, go ahead. You go ahead, Marshall.
Back to your rough cycle, you said that we're using a new approach. We might want to talk about what is in your approach, the so what and the now what. Sometimes your reflective practice also works well to talk about what went wrong. I could be an experienced teacher and I could think I know how things are going to play out, but we have some fiasco that happens and we couldn't predict it. What went wrong? For example, there's a hurricane and the place flooded out. That actually happened once to us.
Yes.
That led to the so what and now what, where we were thinking about, okay, what contingency plans, what other ways would we deliver the class? If this activity cannot come off, technology being one of the things that could fail.
Yes.
What we're going to do as our backup approach, and you have to pre-plan for those things.
And you know what's a good example of that, or a phenomenon where a similar situation may have occurred. We all have been engaged in remote teaching and learning. So what some of us may have taught in the online environment for the first time, or still getting used to it. And so you may have tried different things, and you would have to at some point in time stop and reflect on your practice or your initiatives or your delivery, because sometimes the way you deliver in a face-to-face environment might not be as agile or effective in the online environment. It might take a while. So you would need to stop and reflect at some point. Not so, Marshall? Yeah,
we definitely have to, Justin.
Yeah, so the reflective practice or the cycle is always ongoing. There's always, and that's the good thing about teaching and learning. It rarely gets stagnant or static or boring because of these things. There's always something new to reflect on. And all of that feeds into what we call your ePortfolio, your teaching portfolio, where it's almost like the evidence. Yes, yes, thanks for that. And it's almost like the evidence or manifestation of your reflective practice, of your teaching, evidence of your teaching. All of that is part of your portfolio. And so when you think of a portfolio, it's almost like a documentation of your teaching practice. Yeah, we think of it as, we know that publications might be evidence or documentation of your research interests or your research agenda. And in like manner, your teaching portfolio is the evidence or the documentation of your teaching practice. All right. Now it comprises, of course, your teaching responsibilities. So the courses that you've been teaching, your instructional contexts, and of course your instructional context will incorporate or encompass your student profiles, which we'll get into in a bit. The levels, whether it's graduate or undergraduate, that sort of thing. Accomplishments, what awards did you achieve or earn? Your experiences. So your teaching portfolio is basically almost like your resume or your CV as it pertains to teaching and learning, yeah, or your practice, your expertise, your professional development, your trajectory in teaching and learning. Now, why is this important? Now, it's important for several things. first of all, for you, it allows you to see your development over a period of time. Yeah, what initiatives worked, what initiatives didn't work, and that sort of thing. It's good for any sort of evaluation of your teaching and its effectiveness. Yeah, it's good for employment. There are several institutions now that require applicants to submit an ePortfolio, yeah, along with their application. So that's something you want to consider. Teaching awards. We do have and I think Dr. Hill may mention it later on, the UE Guardian Group Teaching Awards. That's what we have within our university context. So that's one award. But there are also regional and international awards. I don't know, Marsha, if you want to share on that, because I know you've gone through both. Yeah.
At UE, every 2 years, I think, we have the UE Guardian Group Teaching Award.
Mm-hmm.
In my particular past, I would have been in the CETL program and was rounding up the CETL program when the teaching award came up, and CETL said, listen, why don't you apply? I really would never have thought to apply because we don't often see ourselves as worthy of applying for an award, right? So hearing from them that they thought that the work I was doing in CETL had already been reflective of me meeting certain standards. I was able to use the CETL content to just convert it into a website and do a little more polishing and go for the award, and surprisingly win the award. That was back in 2016. Mm-hmm. 3 of us won the award, actually. 2 from social sciences, Dr. Chandra Bhatnagar was the other person, and the 3rd person was from engineering. That was Dr. Chris Maraj.
Yes.
Then UE has another level of awards, and that is the Vice Chancellor's Award. So I think that comes out every 2 years as well. The second year to the year that we run it as the Guardian Group Award with UE. Right.
And we also have the AAU Award. That's also another teaching award. We did advertise earlier this year a session on creating ePortfolios and so on for that particular award. So the AAU is another step that you may want to consider, that allows you to same thing, it's just like the Guardian Group, UE Guardian Group Teaching Award ceremony. It all starts with you submitting an ePortfolio.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is
like trying your hand at doing the UE Guardian Group Award first is a wise thing to do, because, for example, applying to the Vice Chancellor Award requires you to have won a UE Guardian Group Teaching Award. So you work on your first level, then you level it up, you go for the next level, and then go for the international or bigger regional ones. And with it come bigger and bigger financial rewards as well. Yes. I think from $5,000 for the UE Guardian Group, TT, to about $30,000 for the Vice Chancellors, if I remember the figure right. And then, of course, the international ones would be paid in whether it's euro or US dollars, that kind of thing. So that this is also a good income incentive.
Yes.
Going to awards applications.
Right. And it also, helps to enhance your academic profile as well, needless to say. So many of our applicants or awardees from the teaching awards, as Marsha rightfully said, went on to the Vice Chancellor Awards, which is another level, and then eventually we even had for persons who went to the AAU, applied to the AAU. I think it's the Association of Atlantic Universities. So they have got, and it's basically you just tweak the ePortfolio. You just, of course, update it, because every year you would have done something different or something new, and you just have to document it. So you could reach very far with your ePortfolio. Another thing is, of course, for short-term purposes, of course, for the improvement of your teaching practice. Yeah, that is tantamount. it's also a good avenue for you to foster collaboration and reach out to other educators. I think we did mention that in Tuesday's session, where you, and even in Monday's session, creating a community of practitioners, where, you know, for example, Marsha and I could collaborate on something, even like what we're doing now is an example of that. And if we were to take this a step further, I'm just using this session as an example, Marsha, we could even engage in some reflective practice on how this session went, yeah? And where we could go from here, whether we could continue a co-teaching or co-facilitation situation, yeah?
And it has begun to spark that because we are actually working on a paper together, Justin.
Yes, definitely.
We are not certain people share the same values or directions that you have. Give you the opportunity to, in your field, add someone else's field in order to broaden the work and the value that you're putting out in your research.
Exactly, exactly. And that's what your ePortfolio is all about. It's multifaceted in terms of the tenets of it, but it's also multidimensional in terms of where you could reach with it. Yeah. And like I said, it's evidence of your teaching effectiveness. So as we go further, getting into the nitty-gritty of it now, we want to go into the first element of your teaching portfolio, which is the teaching philosophy and goals. Now, you could put in the chat, anybody, or you could use a mic. What do you think a teaching philosophy is all about? What is it to you? Not what your teaching philosophy is, but what do you think a teaching philosophy comprises, generally speaking? When you think teaching philosophy, what comes to mind? Anybody?
Maybe an easier start is to ask how many of us have drafted a teaching philosophy.
Okay, let me call some names because I see, oh, Darren, go right ahead. I was going to call you just now, so go right ahead. Your mic is off.
No, I was just saying I had one drafted. I mean, what do I, well, essentially it speaks to, how do I put it? I can't find the words right now. Maybe it's the lunch I just had, but it speaks to the core values that you hold on to as a lecturer. Yeah.
That's it. That's exactly it. So you hit the nail on the head in one sentence there, Darren. Your teaching philosophy is all about your conceptions of teaching and learning. You know, it incorporates what drives you as a teacher, as an educator. It informs the kinds of things that you incorporate, the activities, the technologies, the teaching strategies that you incorporate in your teaching practice. Yeah. So and like Alana said, what do you want to achieve from your practice? I like that, Alana. Very good, very good. So it's really about your beliefs as an educational practitioner, and the impact of those beliefs. So let's say, for example, you may believe that as a teacher, you are a mentor. You have to mentor students. That teaching and learning is about mentorship in some regards. I'm just giving an example. And because of that, it may inform the way you interact with your students, or the way you teach your students. Your conceptions or conceptualizations of teaching would be made manifest in the way you engage with your students and the kinds of activities you incorporate in your sessions and that sort of thing. Yeah. So, Marsha, I don't know if you want to add to that. So really, that's what your teaching philosophy is all about. And it's almost like you take some time to really do some introspection. What do I want to accomplish as a teacher? How do I see teaching and learning? Yeah.
Justin, one of the things that came in for me was, how did I come to believe what I've believed? and teaching and teach. So some of your life experiences in your formative years, some of the challenges you've had, some of those things really shift our teaching philosophy.
Right.
For example, totally changed my teaching philosophy. Suddenly I saw the way I teach very differently. So all of those things, your personal background comes into who you are. And I guess to me, a portfolio also is not just presenting ourselves professionally, but it's a humanistic kind of presentation of the teacher.
Yes, it certainly is. It certainly is. I like that approach, that perspective, Marshall. Thank you so much for that. And so, you know, your teaching philosophy is sort of the premise or the thesis or the backbone of your entire portfolio. You know, because like I said, it informs your practice, it informs the way you engage students, it informs you know, everything about your teaching practice. So your teaching philosophy can be seen from, there are different tenets to your teaching philosophy. You have how do you see, when it comes to students, how do you see learning? Do you see learning as something that is more experiential, that is more reflective, that is, so what in your view is important in the learning process? And then likewise, what is important to you in terms of teaching? So if you know that students learn a particular way, then what is your role as the teacher or the educator? So you might see your role as a mentor or a guide on the side. What is your role, you know, in that regard? And then of course, that now informs or influences your practice. Some of the things that the activities you might incorporate into your sessions and so on. And then after that, of course, well, reflection is all part and parcel of it. So if I were to ask, and I'm asking one of the current CETL students, let's use Calicia for now, I'm putting her on the spot. All right. If I were to ask you your teaching philosophy, what is your teaching philosophy in terms of students? What is your conception on how you see students and the way that students tend to learn in your context, or their traits, their dominant traits? And when I say dominant traits, like attitudes and that sort of thing that you encounter in your teaching practice. Could you elaborate?
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Justin.
Hi.
And I know you're going to call me.
Of course.
Okay. So I facilitate the internship in sports management course. Mm-hmm. So for me, I see myself as a guide. I don't see myself as a lecturer or teacher, because the students are already in the sports management field. So right. They're involved in the environment already. So it's just to kind of guide them or connect the theories and the concepts to what they already know and experiencing.
Right.
So, and because they're already in the environment, mm-hmm. They see, because of their age group and their background and everything, considering the time that we're living in the digital age, mm-hmm. I like to use a lot of technology and media tools right. to kind of bridge all of what we already know, because we're not teaching something new. We're just connecting the information that they know and trying to bring it into perspective in terms of the sporting field, sport environment.
Excellent. Well said. You notice what you did there, right? You elaborated on how you see, you know, what your students are like, what traits they have, what preconceived notions they have, how they some of their attitudes even. And then you link that to teaching, you know, what is your role, and that's what you're a guide. And then you connected that to your practice, that it's technology mediated, whether it's, you know, 100% online, and you incorporate technology tools and so on to enhance your practice. So you see how your teaching philosophy, like I said, is multifaceted. Marsha, you want to elaborate and take a similar shot at it? Haven't gone through this, of course.
Sure, I listened to Calicia and I heard Calicia say, I start with what these people already know. So I look at their prior knowledge. Mm-hmm. their prior learning, and I help them to construct on top of that the meaning. So that's a constructivist approach, right? It's really, really in line with the teaching philosophies that are advocated, and Aname comes to mind, that are many of our, top teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Think about who your students are, where they are, what their environment is, what their technological capabilities and limitations are.
Yes.
What their needs are. And our students come from very different social backgrounds. Depending on those backgrounds, we have to change our teaching approach. And we found a lot in the pandemic, especially, where some of them may not have devices. So how do you engage them?
Yes.
So finding ways to teach them in more than just an online look at this screen and do this thing. How do I get them to get up and do something, practice something, come back and talk about their experience, look at the affective element. Consider all the levels of Bloom's taxonomy, because I'm teaching the capstone course in the management studies program. So when they're ready to leave, what we're trying to do is weave together so many different courses and give them a project that helps them pull it all together.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I did my teaching philosophy, it was about talking about where did I come from, how was I taught, what were the pros and cons of that approach, and how has my own approach come out of that?
Mm-hmm.
And then what have I learned as I've actually become a teacher? Because in theory, the way I thought I would teach is not the same way I actually do.
And you raise a good point there, Marsha, with part of your teaching philosophy is also reflecting on your experience as a student. To me, those make sometimes the strongest philosophy or most interesting philosophies, because you get to take that opportunity to reflect on your experience as a student, and you may even choose to mention a teacher that impacted you substantively. For me, that was something that sort of helped me to change paths a bit, because I was able to experience both good and not so good educators. And when I experienced really good educators, I was like, oh, so this is it was like a eureka moment. And so that helped me to because those educational practitioners those teachers that were good examples for me, I would say, I looked at it not only from a student side, but also from the teacher side. As I got older, I realized, okay, what they were actually doing. So they were able to, it wasn't that I had to conform to their style, but they conformed to my learning needs. And so for me as an educational practitioner, it has informed my approach ever so often. So it means that as an educator, you can't, for me at least, you don't want to be static, that one size fits all. Yeah, but it's dynamic. It's dynamic. So definitely, and then of course, in your teaching philosophy, you could connect your experiences as a student. That could segue nicely into your initial experiences as a teacher, and then how you evolved thereafter, how you grew into it, how you became, in some instance, I'm sure we could all relate. Darren, for example, you were quite, I think you mentioned it in one of the sessions earlier this week, that you were quite nervous in some of your initial teaching experiences, not so? Darren?
I don't think we heard if it was Darren or Javid you were calling.
I think it was somebody else, but I mean, I get nervous before every class, regardless.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so but the nervousness compared to where you are now, compared to back then, it's a different kind of nervousness, yeah, or butterflies if you want to call it that. So we have a little activity. So you should have your notepads and so on ready. And we want to at least get you started in creating a teaching philosophy. So I want you to jot down just in a couple points some of the responses here. So what are your conceptions of views of students. How do students learn? Yeah. So take a minute or two to what do you think is tantamount to students learning? Whether students, you believe that students learn through social experiences, whether you believe that students learn through active engagement, whether you think students learn by better through technology, yeah, or one-on-one attention. And then of course, your role. How do you see your role? So we've been talking about this for a while. You're in the teaching process. What do you see yourself as a guide on the side? Do you see yourself as a mentor? Do you see yourself as a disseminator of information? Yeah. And then of course, how does that inform your practice, your teaching practice? Is it something that, okay, you want to make as much information available to students as possible? Or is it that you are much more concerned about the students' well-being beyond the context of your course? Yeah, so it's not just about the student passing your course, but you think it's beyond that. And then of course, when do you take time to reflect? Is it right after a session, after a semester, that sort of thing? So it takes, I'll probably give you just about 3 to 5 minutes, and you could type in the chat when you've done that, and we can move on from there. Yeah, Marsha, in the meantime, while persons are typing, do you want to elaborate on any of these things as someone who has gone through the process?
I just wanted to say, while you were chatting before, the idea that came to mind is like, if we have this toolbox, and as you see, you know, the good, bad, and the ugly of being taught and of teaching, you get to put new tools into your toolbox, you get to upgrade some, and then as situations come up, you choose which approach you want. So it's not that we're locking into one approach.
Right.
Not that we even have to choose that this is the only way to see it. I may see that there are many approaches, and I choose, it's a contingency kind of view to teaching. Whatever comes up, I choose the right one for me in the context, or the right one for my students in the context.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So let me ask, and I know persons that might still be writing or jotting down some points, but let me ask Alana, just as to walk you through the process. So Alana, how do you see your students in terms of their learning, the learning process?
So I think what my opinion is that they come ready to learn. So I see myself as someone who, of course, will, you know, offload material on them, but at the same time, the way in which I do it is a way that should be enjoyable to them, so that they actually enjoying the process, and it's not that they're not there writing down notes and wondering when they're going to use it, but it's something that they enjoy as we go along, and they don't realize how much they're actually learning, but in the end, it will come together. So
for you, the learning process should be fun and enjoyable.
Yes, for the most part, you know, like they didn't realize how much they actually learning behind the scenes, like I'm giving them the pieces of the puzzle. And at some point in time, they'll be able to build the puzzle and get a clear picture when it comes together.
Yeah, absolutely right. So if you see learning as something that should be fun and enjoyable, then what do you see your role from the teacher side now? So you know what your students, what you know, the ways in which your students might learn best, or you know, their preferences and so on. So what is your role in light of that?
So to guide, to keep them interested, one, so since that's, you know, that part, is to keep them interested. I think it is the bottom line is to, you know, get the information over to them. Make sure that they can meet their academic goals as well. This like they sign up for this course. This is what they're supposed to achieve from this course. So at the end of the day, I want to be, you know, reassured that okay, a student having done my course would know the following things, or they would be able to help somebody, or they have the knowledge of the content.
Nice, nice. So this is like easy stuff for you, man. So so you know the ways your students. So you see, it's like it's not rocket science, eh? So you know what your students, let's say, learning preferences are. You know that the learning process should be fun for them, and you just said that your role as the educator now, or facilitator, is to guide, is to keep them engaged, to provide them with the necessary content and rigor, I would assume as well, that you said somewhere inside there. And when it comes to your practice now, so you elaborated on how you see students, how you see yourself. What about your practice?
So yeah, so I try to incorporate different strategies. I try as well checking in with them. So to get an idea of, do they really think the course is enjoyable? Are they really, following in the direction that I think I am leading them in? Right. So I think it's important that at certain points in the semester, I wouldn't necessarily say coursework exams, but maybe it's around that kind of time that I kind of do a check-in and say, well, hey, are the students really, following the direction that I was intending to lead them in? Right.
I like that. So that's almost like your reflective practice there as well, your reflection, because you're getting feedback from students. And as Marsha said in the chat, it's through formative assessments. So you hit the nail on the head there, Alana. So see how easy it was, right? I'm sorry, Sandra just had to step away for a while, because I really wanted to hear from Sandra what her take on this was. But that's okay. Rohani, let me take one more person. Rohani, how do you...
Oh gosh, I'm trembling now. Wow.
Don't worry, it's easy. How do you see students in your teaching context in terms of, what attitudes they come with, what learning preferences they might have? How do you see all of that, the learning process in your context?
Well, I teach primarily mature students. A lot of them, they come from industry. So they already come with knowledge, and what I find is that they learn a lot by sharing experiences and more like experiential learning. So I try to facilitate, that kind of experience where they can, share, work in a team, discuss topics, and have, as you had indicated just now, active engagement in the class. So that's what I like. I like, having a lot of discussions. You would see that I ask a lot of questions and I encourage them to share their experiences because we all learn from each other. So I particularly like that approach with my students because they are postgraduate students and they bring a lot to the table.
Nice. I like how you, in that, even though you were nervous, you said, you answered all just like that. Your students are mature and they have, so you take an experiential approach. So that's your teaching practice, and your role is really to facilitate. So you answered most of the questions just like that. I don't know why you were nervous. Let me take one more person because
well, before you take the other person, I could attest to what Dr. Maraj just mentioned, because I sat in one of her classes many years ago, and she is telling it as it is. So I from a student perspective, I could tell you that that approach when it comes to teaching adults or mature students is very powerful. And me being the youngest in the group, I also benefited from all those rich conversations.
Right.
Yeah, so that's something I think for sure Dr. Maraj, you should include in your teaching philosophy.
Yeah. And it's based on theory too, in terms of yes, pedagogy, but more so andragogy, which is teaching adults. And teaching adults is all about that experiential approach. So whether you knew it or not, Rohani, you're right on track with
wow.
Yes, you're right on track.
Well, thank you so much, Javid, because Javid was an excellent student. I really enjoyed interacting with him.
Excellent. I see Marsha has a hand, so I'll take Marsha and then Chris. Go ahead.
So I wanted to ask a question of Rohani, because one of the things that I wanted to find out if you also notice this or feel this, Rohani, as part of this background work that you're doing for this activity. Do you also feel that because you have very experienced students coming into your classroom, that some of them come with misconceptions and bad habits, that kind of thing, that may have been trained up in the years in industry? And therefore, what does your process maybe do to reshape and redirect?
But that's a very interesting question, because again, you know, even though they may come with preconceived ideas or so, or even bad habits, I think the influence of the peers is very powerful as well. And many times you may think what you know is best, but when you hear another experience, sometimes it gives you this aha moment, oh, I need to wonder about, you know, this practice. And all the time I may be thinking this is the best approach, but recently I had a team approach as well, where I sat in a group, we worked in a group, and I learned so much from two other colleagues from UWI in two different faculties. And that was a powerful moment for me, because I am still, every night I go to bed and I'm reflecting on, hey, why didn't I think about this before? I should have been doing this, you know. And that learning is so powerful. And sometimes I feel bad. I send them an email or a WhatsApp about 2 in the morning saying, hey, this is my aha moment. Sorry to disturb you, but thank you for sharing all of that with me, because I am learning still at this old age, you know, I am still learning.
And that is critical to put into your process, because you also see yourself as always evolving, never having the handle on the truth, because what is the truth? And recognizing that, yes, students need to grow and be shaped, but there's a gentle way and there's a reflective way to do it too, so that they're more open to change as opposed to feeling it's right and wrong.
Yes, yes, I like that.
Thank you.
So Steve,
Chris has his hand.
Yes, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just like to go next to present my
nice. Go right ahead. Go right
yeah,
ahead.
sorry about that. Yeah, so so this is kind of good, because I have the opposite. Most of my students, I teach programming, so very technical content, and most of the students are year one, so they come in with a lot of the bad habits and preconceived notions, and they usually don't have the mathematical background. So I usually see where my students are is really to learn through practicing, right? That's like the only way to kind of get a sort of immersion. That's what I think that the best way for them to learn it without having the theoretical background and that kind of thing. So my process, I see myself then as a role. My role is to explain these complicated concepts, but without using technical terms. So that should be able to get the essence of the ideas across to them without having them to get bogged down with a lot of the jargon and that kind of thing.
Right.
So, in my practice, what I tend to do, I tend to give a lot of projects, and I tend to explain things using analogies or concepts that they might understand or be familiar with. What I find, which kind of resonate, one of my teaching colleagues had a term called understand the understanding. And every time I teach something, I realize that I realize a way to explain it in a much simpler way. And it happens like every single time I teach a course. I might teach a course 6 times, but the 6th time I teach it, I get a more a succinct way of bringing across some sort of topic. So reflectively, I noticed that it works at least for the students that do well. They do really, really well throughout the degree. But you always have this little group of students who tend to struggle. And they benefit because they tell me themselves they never thought about this being explained like this, and you really understand compared to other teachers and so on. But I still feel like there's some way to improve. So that's my question to you guys now. How do you treat with students that have this huge gap? And it's not really through any fault of their own. It's kind of is what it is. So how do you work with that?
The gap meaning what? What they
so like the theoretical knowledge, the logic necessary to understand the topic. So usually when they come in, they don't have that from the CXC maths and that kind of
Right. And what field is this? This is in
it's like programming, mathematics, that kind of thing.
Is there anybody who wants to chime in? Because I see Kathy has the same concern or same issues. Anybody, you just, because I'm sure it's something that we've all encountered. Go right ahead.
Morning. In response to that, okay, in my unit, we have students, I mean, you would assume that all students coming in have basic language capabilities, right? As in everybody knows how to write, Let me just go with how to write. But English isn't as common in terms of competency as you would think it ought to be. And so what my unit has done is not something that I think everybody can be able to do, is we would have set up workshops that would allow students to attend randomly throughout the semester so that it would help them to beef up the areas that they're lacking. So if they don't understand how to construct sentences, mechanics, spelling, grammar, those kinds of things, that's the workshops. But we now all have access to, everybody, you know, can have a My eLearning page or My eLearning course shell. And that allows you to put up a lot of support material that you can point students to. And I found that it's been very useful to be able to just put up extra support material that can help them get the background knowledge that they need. And the students now, not all students are going to access it, but the students who actively feel that they need to improve themselves, they will go and access the resource materials. So I think if you need them to beef up things, you have to, at this stage, you have to rely on them doing a certain amount of independent learning because you can't cover the material yourself. And so the course shells come in handy for that.
Excellent. Excellent response, Rhoda. I wanted to hear from you, so thank you so much for that. I think to piggyback on that, I think it might be good to have some sort of diagnostic test. And you could get a diagnostic assessment through different means. So at least the students are aware of where they're at and what they need to know before going further into the course. So I think that helps, you know, because sometimes students may not know that they don't know, you know? And so, so I think to further endorse what Rhoda suggested, you might also want to incorporate some sort of diagnostic assessment so that it you know, so students are aware of where they're at and what they need to beef up on before they move further into the course.
So just to chime in there with respect to the diagnostic. Again, so the unit has writing workshops, grammar workshops, and then there's also the writing center. Now, I'm talking about the resources we have. I'm not saying that you all necessarily have to do these things in all of the other departments or faculties. But once in the very first tutorial, the first activity they meant to do helps to identify issues like that. So it's like a nice fun activity where they have to spot and identify errors and fix errors in an assignment. And when you begin to realize that there are certain errors that they can't fix, or rather if they don't score at a particular level in locating the errors, and we don't make it into a punitive sort of thing, you just indicate to them, all right, if you feel that there are certain areas that went over your head and you want to beef up on these things, these are the workshops, this is the writing center, this, that, the other, et cetera, so that you can begin to beef up on your skills. What I can also suggest, apart from the diagnostic, is if you're doing, and again, this is on the portal, if you're doing quizzes, so you just have like weekly quizzes based on the content, you know, not very many questions, 5 questions, maybe 10 questions. And if they've scored lower than a particular score, then tell them, you know, maybe you need to go and review this, review that, review the other. So it helps to guide them to where they need to build their areas of deficiency.
Excellent. Well said, Rhoda. I think that hit the nail on the head, that, you know, and it's important that students know where they are at too. So what we in the field, what we call it is metacognition. So they become aware of their learning, where they're at and their learning process. Yeah. And Chris, I also want to say that what you said prior to your question, you literally answered satisfy the requirements of this activity. You stated what your students are coming with, what their preferences are, what their attitudes are, where they're at in terms of where they need to be, and your role, yeah, you and your teaching practice. You take a more project-based approach, and your feedback, you get feedback from students in terms of, you know, what they think of it, what their experience is like, and so on. So you're very much on point with that. And I think you did mention learning from other colleagues. I think in your blurb you mentioned where you learn from other colleagues and that sort of thing. So I think if you incorporate all of that into your teaching philosophy, you're on the right track. And yes, I see Alana mentioned in the chat that the mathematics department also took a similar approach in beefing up students' skill sets when they come into their programs or courses. So we're on the right track. So
just one point that
go ahead.
He was basically looking to meet students where they were, and he identified that there was a small group of students who really didn't meet the same starting level as the rest.
Right.
Some of the things that he would want them to do is to bridge that gap, come up, right? And I'm suspecting he already does this, but it's good just to ask, because it could come into his philosophy. When you have a student who doesn't have some of the early skills, sometimes you give them like a programming question that when they program it, it's fun. So they learn to program a really basic thing, and they're like, wow, this was so much fun. I really want to learn to do this because I could see myself enjoying this.
Right, right.
Enjoyment in them so that they're able to take the pain of going to study it and practice it over and over to come up to the level.
Excellent, excellent. Chris, you have any response to that?
Yeah. We have, well, not exactly in the class, but we have a kind of organic ecosystem where we have like the third year or second year students that we know are good, and we try to have like a kind of informal group now. We call it the UE Jammers. So, and even with the UX, where we have them work on projects. So even though you're in year one, you would come and you would be paired with somebody and you'll try to do something cool. But that's the idea, the philosophy there is that we want to show them, you know, that it have things you can enjoy and problems you could solve for yourself by doing this computer science. So hopefully if they work with somebody who's their senior, you know, it serves several purposes. To one, have a guide, because remember, there's only so much time we have to do things. Right. And then two, they hopefully could build like a kind of mentor relationship. And I mean, have varying levels of success, but that's at least what we have. But it's not as directed as what she said, but I'll definitely think about how to do that in the course.
Yes, and all that should be incorporated in your teaching philosophy as well, yeah? And in other parts of your portfolio. So, and this brings us to teaching and learning responsibilities and activities. So that might be one initiative that could be folded into your teaching responsibilities and activities. It's an initiative. When you think of teaching responsibilities and activities, what you just mentioned there, Chris, may come under teaching innovations or initiatives, where you kind of foster a sort of student mentorship. I will not call it program as a formal thing, but an initiative, yeah? So and in other instances, I know because I worked with Alana and the mathematics, I can't remember the exact name of it, Alana, but that special mathematics course, that was a course that you guys developed, and it was also an initiative, yeah, that was geared towards the improvement of students' learning and of the learning experiences on the whole. Not so, Alana?
Hi, yes, it was the Mathematics Help Center when we were setting up the course shell for that. Nice,
nice. And I see Chris is also mentioning in the chat, it's really having fun with code or coding. Very good. Chris, that would be something that you could also incorporate in this part as well. What are some of the approaches you have incorporated or used to make coding fun, you know? So all of that is part and parcel of whether it's teaching materials, we may have made certain screencasts or podcasts and so on. That could be part of it. course modification. So you may have changed the structure of the course, the assessments. I think you mentioned project-based assessments. So all of that is part and parcel of it. When we think of teaching responsibilities, just think of your teaching load. What are the courses you've taught? What levels, graduate or undergraduate? The size of the classes, whether it's 800, because I know persons like Rhoda and others may teach courses that have 600 plus students. And then there are instances where you might just have 50 students. So, you know, what the kinds of practices that you could do in both cases would vary. What sort of committees you are on in terms of whether it's a curriculum committee or faculty curriculum committee, the teaching materials, what sort of, course modifications and development. Is it something, let's say you, during this transition to remote teaching, you may have made modifications to your course, even though you consider them temporary initially, but you realize the effect is you got greater success. So you might want to make those temporary changes permanent. That's a modification. Then the materials, Rhoda mentioned that you guys put materials for students to beef up, you know, where they need to be. You may even create original material, whether you create a podcast, you create a screencast. A couple years ago, and you'd see in one of the sample portfolios we'll provide for you, Jason Matthews, he created a YouTube channel. I can't remember the exact name of it, but that channel had a bunch of material he and his students created, and it really turned that course around where students were more excited about the topic, about the course. You know, so these, and that was of course an initiative and innovation that he implemented in the course. So for you, I'm going to ask you to think of one course that you've taught, right? And give us a basic description of it. You could, of course, in your notes, your notepad, whether it's undergrad, postgrad, what was the size, the class size, the student profile. Marsha mentioned earlier about the socio-cultural background of the students. Some of you mentioned the preconceived notions, the misconceptions that they may have, that sort of thing. The mode of delivery, whether it's face-to-face, remote, blended, online. What was the course about? Did you create this course? Was it a totally new course? And what did you do to improve the course if it was something that was existing before? All right, I'm going to ask Marsha to sort of share on, you know, to give an example of what she did in answering and providing this information. So while you are typing, Marsha, I guess you could probably shed some insight there. Please.
Okay, Justin, I'll take one that maybe is not so straightforward. One of the things that I find is students come with different learning skills.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll do a VAC test with my students the first week. And I will find out, I am a multimodal, I'm VAR and K, which works well for me. But some of my students might be visual learners, or the hardest student to reach for me is the kinesthetic learner. The kinesthetic learner who is put into a 3-hour class with me to listen to me talk about business strategy, for example, isn't held for 3 hours, because it's like telling you, put your finger on your lips and be silent and listen to me for 3 hours. That is punishment, cruel torture, right? So what I did for one class for business strategy is every activity I would try to change up the teaching style to appeal to different learning preferences. It's not their only way to learn, but they definitely have preferences. So we want to make it easier for some and change it. So sometimes it's stories, sometimes it's talking about your experiences and an accident that happened to you and what the root cause was and how we could fix that. But in terms of the kinesthetic person, there was a particular course that I was teaching offensive and defensive strategy. And that could become a very boring thing to teach if I just pull the book and teach you from it and talk about a business using offensive and defensive strategy. I decided to talk about the West Indies cricket team. I didn't teach the class by talking about the cricket team. I taught the class by getting them to walk with a bat and a ball. And the class went outside onto the greens and we actually played cricket. So we broke up the class into two.
Right.
They played and whether you're bouncing a little gentle ball to me because you think I'm a girl or you tells the difference between offensive and defensive, right?
Yes, indeed.
And the students were revved up. I did this halfway through the class, so that's when everybody lagging. So we top back up the energy, we go back in the class, and they talk about who cheat and who pelt and who do everything and have a laugh for 5. And then we get down to talking about who used what strategy.
Right.
Defensive moves, some were using offensive moves. Then we go into talking about Curtly Ambrose and the fact that if he is the last man facing a ball, it's defensive all the way because they just want him to hit one to get him away from the wicket, right? And give everybody a laugh. But the people who are sports oriented, the people who are kinesthetic, immediately begin to love that course because it's no longer about business, is no longer about what's inside the book. Now they start to see things happening in the world around them and seeing business strategy applying to them.
Wow. So it became more real to them. It's almost like an experiential approach you took.
So it changes the way the whole class works because then they come and they talk to me about their tourism experience.
Right.
Of the class theory. Instead of me force feeding them class theory, I feed them experience. I listen to them.
Question, how was it taught before? Was it that they were just, well, I don't know if you might know, but how was it taught before? Is it that they just were given theories to learn?
Okay, so before there was a text and everybody would read that text and say, let's talk about the features, the pros and the cons, how would you see this applied in business? Now what we're doing is we're saying business is not just in a company that's stuck in this one form of a company. West Indies cricket team is a company setting. Companies take a million different formats, right? Starting to help people to realize that.
I was just looking at the chat. Sorry, glad to know they know who he is. Yes.
I don't know, but then we'll talk about Brian Lara, who everybody knows.
Right.
Lara and the 375, and we'll start to get them excited and say, well, Curtly Ambrose and Walsh.
And it end up in a whole snowball effect kind of thing, yes.
And they get excited about it and they go and
But the reason I asked that question was because I wanted to know if that was an improvement in the course in terms of innovation that you use in the course, in terms of the way content was taught, yeah?
Not something that would have been done before, taking the students outside to play cricket.
Exactly.
Normal at all, no.
Right. So excellent. So all of that could be incorporated in your teaching activities. Marsha, as you're on the floor, when you created your portfolio, what sorts of things you highlighted in terms of teaching responsibilities?
You want me to pull up this, share it on the screen?
Sure, by all means, yeah.
All right.
I'll stop sharing for now.
Okay. All right, so this is my site. This wouldn't be a page that's on the, this is not a page that would be on the menu, but it was just a cool way to say to them, okay, at my door here, welcome, push the door and come in kind of thing. From page, we take them into the next page and we guide them through the portfolio. So I go to the first one and I introduce myself, right? But when we get to my teaching, which is what you're asking,
right?
There's a long way to get here, but I'm just using the
that's all right.
Menu, right? So I talk about the courses and the students, their profiles, what information they're coming with, what courses I teach. Here's a picture of students storming me just before an exam to get a quick
I just scroll up a bit. I noticed what you have there in that second paragraph. I have taught a broad range of learners, right? So you see she's giving some details about the kinds of learners that she's had, mostly male, included heavy technical and calculation elements.
Engineering, and that changed when I came to SOSI.
Right. Some students hail from Caribbean, other Caribbean territories. So you're giving a good idea of the profile of the students, and look at the size, 40 to 50 students to large, 100 to 200 students. So good. Go ahead, sorry.
Right, and then I also talk about the range of the courses that I would teach to them. So we have statistics, process control, which is maths. And then we have a business-oriented management courses, which is theoretical, right? Like business strategy. Some students have never been to school before. They come in on a PLAR into a master's, and some have only been to school, have no work experience.
Wow.
So, and then I talk about a learner analysis that I did, and that's the VAC, and they're looking at their prior knowledge by doing a screening that I did.
Right, so a diagnostic test. So we see there again, good, go ahead.
Actually give them the ability to look at the actual outcome of the learner analysis by linking to it here, right?
Nice.
So a lot of it is I don't take up the space in the portfolio page because it becomes overwhelming to the reader. But for you want to see it, here, click here, and you'll go into another page.
The page, yes.
Then I tell them, okay, so here's how I teach. So I am focused on continual improvement. I use the plan, do, check, act cycle to help me to always do this cyclical improvement. Here's how I develop my course outline, and here's the storyboard that went into the pre-stages of that course outline being developed.
And your reflection.
Here's a sample lesson plan, and when I did roll it out and I had my glitches, here's the reflection to help me to level it up.
So guys, I hope you're seeing how methodical or how sequential and connected everything is thus far. So go ahead, Marsha.
The planning of it, I was planning what I would teach, how I would teach it, right? Then I actually went ahead and taught it. So we're in the do phase now. So I was going PDCA, right?
Right.
So we're in the do phase. Here's what I do in terms of teaching, building my competencies for my student, using the constructivist approach to build like scaffold on top of each level to learn. I also have like an action research kind of approach sometimes. So here's how I do my research in the scholarship of teaching and learning, and why I want to publish in this field, because I hold teaching there, you know.
Yes.
I want to help others to learn, and I want to learn from others.
And you know, and I'm glad you showed this. And I hope I'm not going off on a tangent here, Marshall, but many persons might be looking and thinking, well, do I qualify for a teaching award, or should I go through all of this? You know, just what is the outcome? Could you share from your experience what it was like for you? Because some persons, you know, so for example, you didn't have a doctorate at the time, correct? So could you shed some light on that?
Okay, so when I applied here, it was 2016. I had worked in industry as an engineer for 15 years, and I had been missing teaching. I had given up part-time teaching because I had kids now, and I was really missing teaching. So I made a decision to come into academia. I think the income was 1/3 of the income I used to make before, so it was not comfortable. And I was also out of my home. I used to be in engineering, I'm an engineer, but I was teaching in SOSI. I didn't feel like I was necessarily belonging there. I didn't feel I was good enough. I didn't have the job title of doctor. I was an engineer in social science land, so that made me feel I didn't belong too. So then daring to say I'm applying for a teaching award felt like such a risk.
Right.
And what it did is it helped me to feel comfortable in my skin. I think is the most important thing. It's not even about pride or bragging or anything like that. Genuinely felt like, wow, you know, I must be doing something right. I have found where I want to be. I'm becoming more true to who I want to be. Forget about anybody else's judgment. The only one that counts is mine. And digging into all these aspects of, of this portfolio helped me to explore who I was in all those different places. And then decide, where do I want to go now? I don't have to stay here, but where do I want to go now? Because it is an evolutionary kind of journey.
Yes, yes. So I felt, thank you so much for that. I felt that that needed to be said because we're all on different trajectories. Yeah. And so, sometimes the perception is that,
I should mention that what happened to the year that I came into UE is my daughter became brain injured that year. She was 8 months old and she had severe brain injury. And so I was juggling a lot of psychological issues and feeling overworked and very depressed and at risk. I was at risk.
Right.
I was easing up on myself because I had to hold this job and I had to keep that track. And this helped me to say, despite all that you see that you're not good enough in, here's a judgment that says, actually, you're doing pretty good. And that helps me a lot.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. That, I think, like I said, that needed to be said because, we all have different challenges, different stages in our careers, and I think our personal lives. And I think, when you think of, okay, applying for a teaching award or creating a portfolio, so for some strange reason, you always think of why not, why you shouldn't, at least it may initially come to mind.
Yeah.
When really you
the big reason would also be we don't have time.
Yes. Right? You find all the reasons why you cannot do it.
And I definitely didn't have time, right? But I put in like a half hour a day for a couple months. That's what I did.
Right.
And it got built.
Right. And that brings us to another point that creating, and Mr. Muhammad will show us in a little bit, creating your teaching portfolio is something that you can't do it all in one sitting. It's something that takes time and will continue to evolve as you continue to evolve as an educational practitioner. So I want you to keep that in mind. So have patience with yourself, have patience with the process, trust the process. You're working bit by bit towards a great reward. So let me continue with
and if I may, I just want to stress here one of the recurring things we're seeing from Marcia's account is that it's not a sterile account, and I think most persons may be saying it has to be correct, it has to be right. You notice what she's doing. What can she do differently in terms of some of the things that she was not doing as she thought she should? And I still think this is what persons may be thinking, that it has to be a perfect account. Exactly. And certainly it's an ePortfolio. It's a portfolio of your journey, and the journey where you are now is not where you were before that. And I think that's what you're doing, giving an account of all of these different things and how you got there.
That's exactly it. Including the hurdles.
For those who want to, so that story with my daughter and son didn't come in here because it would have been rather heavy. I was still learning to deal. But how I am as a teacher, how I teach, so there's a whole list of the instructional approaches that outline next. So for those who want to go through and see, so that they could also see what variety they want to highlight for themselves,
Right.
So I would have talked about using my e-learning and giving many different kinds of resources to them, from audio to video to PDFs to instructional to interactive things and so on. This was part of it, letting students create their own blogs, their own videos, doing of video cases and evaluating movies. So work didn't have to feel like work. They felt like they were cheating and watching a movie and evaluating that, but they were doing the same skills.
I like that. And I see like what you have here, your own videos. Are you referring to videos that you created, correct?
Yes, I would have made my own videos, my own screencasts, that kind of thing for them and put it up.
And that's what I was referring to earlier, everyone, with, teaching materials. All of that would come under teaching materials, whether it's a blog post, screencasts, etc. All of these things, you created. So you want to document those things. And as you rightfully should. So,
develop some of the teaching materials too, because the language they speak to one another works so differently from the language I speak to them. So we have spoken word videos and skits and all kind of crazy things, but people learn a lot from them.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. And look, footage. All of this is yes, you reference to Cuttle, as Dr. Hill is saying, and footage of the class. Yeah.
There's lots of, the students actually sent these pictures into me. I wrote to them and I said I wanted to apply, and I got a whole lot of emails with photos they had taken in class.
You know, somebody was asking, how do you assess the impact of some of your innovations? Not yours necessarily, Marshall, but generally, let's say you took, Daniela, for example, or Gray, you did something innovative, something new in your class or your course. How do you evaluate that? Well, there are several ways you could evaluate that through student feedback. Never underestimate the power of student feedback. Yeah? Feedback could come from, of course, the course experience survey, as Mr. Garcia showed on Wednesday, I think it was. And then you have students' journal reflections. Yeah, cricket boy, cricket, okay. And then we have, you could even do it through focus groups. You might do a little video recording of focus groups, and I've done that before. So there are different ways you could get feedback to highlight the effectiveness of what innovations you've done or implemented. Yeah. So we'll get back to this portfolio in just a bit. Let me just go back to the PowerPoint very quickly. And I know many of you, I just want to ask one or two because I'm watching time. To tell us a little bit about what you did. So for example, Gray, I don't know if you could do that. You could identify a course name or level, just, you know, to address some of these things. What new thing you did in your course?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So sorry for any background noise, a lot is going on here.
That's all right. Go right ahead.
I teach communications, and for example, actually for the past couple of years, even just before the pandemic hit and shut us down, I started for public relations. The assignment would be a podcast. So I actually am now thinking, like, I literally have about 6 semesters now worth of podcasts that I would like to put together, you know, under one, because I do share them as examples with permission of students as well for other students. So basically the podcast allows them to, I narrow down some topics for them. I usually choose something borderline controversial, because it is public relations, and I allow them to have a conversation. And I do something controversial myself, where I tell the students, if you want to do this solo, I don't recommend that, but you can. And if you are doing the podcast solo, because of course there are solo podcasts that are quite great out there, you are welcome to invite, you know, a vaccinated friend or family member to come in and be a guest.
Right.
I mean, just being sarcastic with the vaccination, but you're invited. You know, you can have a guest, a friend, and then they end up, you know, having colleagues from all over the world that come and collaborate with them to create this podcast and help them to have a conversation. So I spend the semester, they can do it solo, they can do it in a group. I limit the groups depending on the size of the course. This semester, the course had 40 students, so I had a maximum of 40 students with their maximum group size. I spend the semester towards that end goal of them being comfortable to have a conversation for 15 to 20 minutes about public relations. And of course, we've had the war, so I've had, unfortunately, a lot of examples of public relations within the war. So they end up having conversations that they certainly didn't think they would have. You know, that's not where they thought the course was gonna go. Sometimes neither do I, and I definitely, during the semester, I'm so very much looking for very relevant and timely recency examples that I can take to class next week. Public relations related, you know, because I just want them to at any moment have that conversation. So the podcast allows them to have that conversation, but also as a communications lecturer, I feel one of the responsibilities is preparing them for the future of digital communication. We were thrown into it, but that is their future. So the podcast, they get scared by it sometimes, but if they can do a TikTok or a Snapchat, I figure they could pull off a podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and before when we were talking about, you know, expectations of the students, and what my responsibility is, it is to show them that they're capable of more than they thought. And once I feel like I have accomplished that by the end of the semester, I feel like I did my job.
Excellent, excellent. I like, so the innovation was that whole podcast thing, and you elaborated on how the impact of it, and it clearly had an impact, and I venture to say greater reach, because you had students who were doing it with, you know, beyond spatial temporal restrictions. So I think that, so that is something you would want to include in your teaching portfolio. So that's a good example there. So very quickly, and I know in the chat we had a little discussion there about how you could create your own videos. You could do that through Screencast-O-Matic, through Zoom. Most persons know how to use Zoom. Just as we're doing now, you could have your PowerPoint up and record yourself, you know, going through your PowerPoint and save it. It's saved to the cloud as an MP4. If you want to add some flair to it, of course, you could always download it and use an editing platform. But usually, you know, once you use Zoom, there are other softwares that you could use, but I mean, Zoom is free right now for UE, so you might want to consider that as an alternative. All right, but you could always download it and store it on whatever platform that you might have, and help develop that repertoire of material, original material, teaching material. So it's just something to consider. I see Paula made mention of it, Dr. Hill made mention of it, Zoom as well. So definitely. So yes, so as we move into the final segment, well, in terms of the teaching portfolio, is evidence of effective teaching, including integration of ITCs. Now, for this, you want to kind of, I just had some practical questions that you might want to consider. But, you know, so things of, you know, how do you reflect and how do you help students reflect on their learning? What kind of feedback you give to students? All of that would have to come into play when it comes to teaching effectiveness. So let's say, Darren, you gave students an assignment. They had to submit this thing in economics, whatever that might be. And you gave students feedback, but feedback that is meaningful. When I say meaningful feedback, it's more than just, okay, very good, excellent, poor, awesome, but detailed feedback means you give them, you go into detail in terms of where they went wrong, or what were the weak areas and what were the strong areas, yeah? And then you look at what was the effect of that feedback. Was it that the student was able to improve the quality of work that was submitted? All of that you can record or document in your teaching portfolio. I'm not sure if Marsha wants to chime in here in terms of assignments and feedbacks and student improvement in terms of their performance. So those are things, yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So in the pandemic, numbers have changed in my class. I think I'm hitting like 250 in a particular class now. It definitely is difficult to give detailed feedback on every assignment when you have 250 people by 6 assignments per semester. What I've been doing is looking for the general feedback and saying, okay, let me tell you how we ended up having grades being grouped. We had a group of people who did this, and here were the weaknesses. The ones at the top, here were the areas that could have stretched a little bit better. the people in the middle, here are the things where we fell short. Of course, I was helping them along because I gave detailed rubrics to start, right?
Right.
So we knew what they needed to deliver. But where did you fall short? Well, it didn't seem like you read the rubric because this was missing throughout, or you all could have, zhuzhed it a little bit by doing this extra. And the ones who had failing grades, here's where we saw the biggest shortfalls. Here are things that you need to work on, not just for passing a project, but for skills development to move forward in this field.
Right.
When it comes to things like calculations, if you're doing a statistical process control chart or something, you would get feedback on the form showing here's where yours went wrong. But if I think I hit about 80 people in that course this semester. So what I would have done is given them a pristine answer. Here's how the ideal answer is. These are all of the elements. This is how I marked it, the mark scheme. Half mark, but I don't give half marks. 1 mark for this, 1 mark for this.
Yes.
So now you get to compare yours to this and see where you fell short. I may not be able to give you one-on-one feedback, but I give you the answer and I tell you what you should be delivering.
Excellent. So it's meaningful feedback, yeah? And students know what to do and can be guided accordingly. So in addition to feedback, now you would have seen TTT, our TTT post, I think TTT is just Tuesday Teaching Tips. It's a weekly thing we send out to everyone. I think it was last week or this week where we spoke about feedback. Feedback is not just from you to students, but it's also from students to you, and also from other colleagues to you, or you to other colleagues. So I'm going to ask Mr. Garcia to shed some light a little bit on the importance of student feedback in this regard for teaching effectiveness. But just before he does that, you see number 3 here, teaching strengths and problems that have been identified by peers who have observed my classroom activities. So that speaks to peer observation, which we had a whole session on Wednesday, I think, and the recording is available on our YouTube channel. So you definitely want to look at that. It gives all of the information there. But Mr. Garcia, I don't know if you could elaborate on the using feedback to gauge teaching effectiveness. Yeah.
Okay, sure, Justin. What we have highlighted on Wednesday would obviously be of help and interest to everyone. Now that the survey is being done via Qualtrics, it's a faster turnaround of the results and rather further analysis of it. So the student feedback is now redesigned to be a more of a developmental tool. And the questions now are more gauged at the entire learning experience of the student than just the student's perception of the lecturer. What it was compared to before was quite a punitive process. So what we are now able to do as the educators is to review the feedback in a dynamic dashboard by Qualtrics and see exactly certain things that we may have accomplished. So let's say, for example, I'm a reflective practitioner and I've introduced Marsha's cricket system in my class. That means that what I can do is in the open-ended section, I am looking for comments pertinent to cricket. So I can see what the students thought of that teaching tool that I've used and changing the classroom, breaking down barriers and allowing for further communication and assimilation of the information. So we want to look at not just the numbers, not just the means. It's very easy to just look at numbers, mean, standard deviation, modes, but pair into it, comparing the qualitative or open-ended comments that the students provide. It is very easy now, as we're saying, because of the capability of the software, that we can look with quite a fine-tooth comb, as it were,
right,
to see what students thought of specific actions that we have taken. We have often seen that they would even say on specific, they would remember and recount the day that it was done in some of the feedback. So it is there, and we are encouraging you to encourage your students to complete it, because that would be a major help, not to us, but more so to you in improving your teaching practice.
Well said, well said. Thank you so much for that, Mark. So you see feedback is at your fingertips, basically. Just a click of a button, and all of that can be folded into your teaching portfolio. All right, so you don't have to worry too much about how you're going to know whether it was effective or not. You're going to have the feedback there. You can use that in addition to any sort of rapport you might have with your students or their journal reflections. So there are different ways you can get feedback. All right, and the feedback would function as a dipstick to your effectiveness in terms of whatever new practice or new approach you may have implemented. And Marsha just shared a resource. Oh, I think you just shared it with me, sorry. You could share it with everyone, Marsha. Something that might be helpful in terms of what was...
Justin, I was thinking that you allow them to do the activity and then I could share it so they could see.
Great. So we're going to get into another activity in just a bit, but just before we do so, very quickly, so I'm going to, for the sake of time, I'm just going to ask you, just going to walk you through it. So let me pick someone. Darren, well, I know your camera is on, so I'm just going to choose you. So think of one activity that you incorporated in your particular course or something, whether it was a project-based thing. You know, I know Chris would have done that, but Chris mentioned it earlier, he took a project-based approach, so we kind of have an idea of that. But Darren, in your course, or even Rhoda, either one, Rhoda or Darren, or Joanne, what was one teaching strategy or approach or activity that you did in your course or your teaching practice, right? Think of it and tell us, well, you don't have to elaborate right now on what it was, but why did you use it? And how it reflects or how it connects to your teaching philosophy. So let's start with Darren.
Well, part of my teaching philosophy is essentially that theory and practice are integrated. So that I move swiftly from theory into application, especially with economics, because you know that's the first course everybody rushed to sign up for, right? And what I teach is urban economics, urban and regional economics, which is a cross-section of geography and economics, urban geography, economics, and city planning. And for various topics, I would have them walk about their neighborhoods or look around as they drive about or travel about for different features or characteristics. So like if we're looking at clustering, you know, what is clustering? When we talk about clustering, then they would look around and realize, oh, that is what clustering is. When we have a whole lot of like businesses together, like on Richmond Street, some of them can identify readily, you know, where these different things occur. Also, when we get to different topics, you know, they start to think differently. Like, you know, nobody ever really thought about how do cities emerge? Why do our cities look the way it does? Because of the plantation economy, we inherited that. So they begin to see things differently, and so they report out, and they're always eager now to report out on what they notice different in their neighborhood, or what they notice different in moving about. So more of the observation type, so they can see what we're talking about is actually what is happening around them and is tangible.
Right. I like that. So you use very much like an experiential, authentic approach.
Yeah. But what I would add is that at the beginning of every semester, before classes start, I have all of my students complete the learning style quiz. And that dictates how I deliver my lectures, because some people are more tactile, some people are, you know, they have different styles. So I would have different versions of the lecture that would appeal to the different types of learners. I won't be able to capture every learner in every lecture, but for the most part, I would make the changes and make modifications as I go along so that everyone at some point will be able to benefit from something. The assignments are sometimes a little bit different. I would incorporate, now I've been using a lot more videos because I realize they like to watch these little 2-minute videos and talk about what is delivered in a 2-minute video is more effective than I can deliver in a half an hour. So I, you know, draw on those. we all have our limitations. So.
And how does that align with your teaching philosophy?
All of that is in my teaching philosophy. That is part of my teaching philosophy. In that I just closed it out. But yeah, I really try to appeal to all of the students in the class to try to make sure that everyone has a good experience.
Right.
And what students, the feedback has often been that, you know, they never realize that economics is something that is really so applied. So, you know, they always see it as some kind of dull theory sitting on a page. Yes. So I kind of lift it off the page and make it a 3D experience. You know, so.
You know, as you're saying that, and I'm thinking what Marsha said and what Chris said and what a couple other colleagues said, and I don't know if Dr. Hill wants to chime in here very quickly. You know, you're seeing the importance of more authentic approaches or experiential approaches, as opposed to traditional sit and read the textbook, chalk and talk kind of situation, kind of approaches. We're seeing and you know, it's very encouraging to see that many colleagues are adopting those more modern 21st century approaches, and you're seeing the benefits of it. Yeah. So I just want to encourage everyone on that. Rhoda, I'm interested to hear what you have to say in terms of what teaching strategies or approaches that you incorporated in your practice, and the impact that the effectiveness of it.
Well, as you know, I teach the courses that all the students are just, you know, dying to do, right? The foundation writing courses. So the first challenge you have when you're teaching, certainly the academic writing courses, is that students come with a certain amount of trepidation because the word of mouth is that, you know, these writing courses are difficult, these writing courses are hard, etc., etc., etc. So what I have incorporated, certainly having gone fully virtual, it was there to some extent when we were doing it face-to-face, but doing it virtually, as what I'm going to talk about, it was there to some extent when I was doing it face-to-face, but I found that I had to rely far more heavily on it in the virtual space. So it's hard to get students to be interactive about something that they don't necessarily, of course, they don't necessarily want to do in the first place. So my teaching practice, or the thing that I relied heavily on in the last 2 years, was class discussions. And let me explain how exactly I did that. Right. The class discussion was never about the course at all, had nothing to do with the course. So I would log in about 5 to 10 minutes before the class was supposed to start, because you always have those students who would come in early, right? Who would log in early. But what they would tend to do is log in and just kind of, they've gone off to do other things. Right. So I would log in and I would start chatting, just, you know, how you all doing, what you're up to, you know, what all eating, who cook, that sort of thing. And whatever was topical at that point in time. And the students are quite happy to start talking about what's going on in their home environment and what they're reading and what they're looking at. And so we would start having that conversation. And other students, of course, when they started to log in, they would log in and realize that they'd entered a room that was mid-conversation, right? Whether it was whether people were chatting or people had switched on their mic and they were responding. And I would start to whatever is the topic of the lecture for that day, I would start to kind of incorporate some of the things from the lecture into the discussion, right? Yes. So on season 2 just came out, for instance. And so the language, because we're talking about language and language usage and that sort of thing, language usage became important because I started asking them, well, okay, if you had to say so-and-so in Bridgerton language, how are you going to say it in Bridgerton language? So it got them to start thinking about how they would improve their register and up their diction and improve their vocabulary, right? Yes. And so class discussions was the thing that I incorporated. And what you found was there would be there'd be running jokes because students began to come in and share their days. So there was one boy who he and a bull had some sort of they had some sort of accident, right? Where he had the oh my goodness, listen, this boy father was mind livestock. And he had the class was an uproar that day because it's how he come in normal in the middle of everybody talking about, whatever they were talking about. And he says, Miss Anneli, I just get knocked down by a bull, so that's why I late to class. So the conversation goes on for a bit, and then somebody's like, okay, are we for real going to pretend that Amar didn't just say he get knocked down by a bull? And I said, listen, I'm not even sure how to raise this particular conversation because I ain't sure what context this thing happened in. So of course that would have taken place. Then there was another student another day, a student whose name is Andre Pacheco. And Andre comes in and he's talking and something he says, and I switch my mic on and I'm talking to him. I'm like, Andre, and we're talking back and forth and whatever it is. And another girl comes in and she said, oh God, I calling this boy Andrew Pancho the whole semester, So then the conversation then switches to how important his name is to him and whether or not he's going to need to get therapy, like go to a counselor to talk about how traumatized he's been by this young lady mispronouncing his name. And then the conversation, interestingly enough, then led to everybody beginning to talk about anxiety and the need for counseling. Right. And it was a nice 5-minute conversation where everybody was kind of endorsing the needs for things like therapy and time management and mental well-being, blah, 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 blah. So at the end of each session, so let me wrap this up. At the end of each session, we'd have, there'd be a short reiteration of things and me asking questions. And what the conversation did was it helped them to remember the concepts of the lecture tied into their personal lives. So they would remember the concepts of the lectures that way. And so that's what yes, I wanted it to be personal to them. I wanted it to be relevant to them. And I wanted that human element to the skills in the course so that they would understand that these is everyday things I'm really trying to teach you all here. Every skills that you can incorporate in your everyday existence.
Exactly. And I think I like that approach you took as well, because that would fit nicely, and Marsha could chime in if necessary, nicely into your ePortfolio as well, because it shows that more organic and authentic approach as well, that helps increase retention, right? Because you just said that they remember what was discussed in class, not just the informal conversation, but the actual content that they're supposed to remember. So, and of course, there's a lot of research on that as well. So I think you're on the right track. And you could see in the chat, everybody is not just laughing, but they're learning from the strategies. So I think job well done, Rhoda. So very quickly, so some things you might want to include in your ePortfolio, some additional things. So learning activities, instruction sheets, or activity sheets, excerpts from the as Mark mentioned, the course evaluation reports, course experience survey, sorry, the feedback from students, as I mentioned before, whether it's journal reflections, focus groups, etc. Feedback from colleagues, if it's a peer assessment, sort of peer observation kind of thing. Teaching awards, all of these things have to strengthen or illustrate your teaching effectiveness. Yeah. So very quickly now, I'm just going to ask that, I know yes, Joanne, I don't know if you missed it in the chat. I was asking to share in the chat what your experience is like, and maybe you could do that as well while we prepare for another activity. Yeah. So because I think persons could learn from you as well. So if you don't mind, you could just put it in the chat. What are some of the innovative activity or approach you did in your class and the impact? Yeah. And in the meantime, I will ask Mr. Mohammed to organize let me look at the time just to make sure we're early, right? So we'll probably just go a little 10 minutes over if you don't mind. By all means, just to make sure you get the full
session.
Full session. All right. So we're gonna go into a very short activity, a breakout group activity. And I'm just gonna put the links to the sample portfolios here. All right. And each group is gonna take one. So Javed, if we have, I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you have 5 groups, and I can't remember how many persons we have in attendance right now.
30.
30. So, oh, it works out perfectly. So we could have probably 5 persons per group. Now, what you're gonna do is so group 1, of course, will be Dr. Bridges, and we go group 2, group 3, group 4, 5 from there. Now, what you're gonna do is just very quickly, okay, no problem. What you can do very quickly is just skim through the portfolios. It was just to give you an idea of what different portfolios look like. You would notice that they all, well, of course, when we come together, I'll reveal that. But I want you to go through the teaching philosophies. What are some of the tenets of the teaching philosophy, the learning responsibilities, teaching and learning responsibilities or activities, the evidence of effective teaching, the other highlights, for example, professional development, other awards they got. So I want you to kind of go through very quickly what are some of the salient points or tenets of each portfolio assigned to your group. Yeah. So group 1, you would have Jacqueline Bridges' portfolio. Group 2, you will have Gita's portfolio. Group 3, Jason's portfolio. Group 4, Marsha's portfolio. And group 5, Farid's portfolio. All right. So I'll give you all of 6.5 minutes. 6.5. What's that?
Dr. Zafran, you're going into breakout rooms?
Yes.
Okay, so let me chime in here if you don't mind.
Sure.
Let's assign one of the sites to a person, and we will let the system manually or automatically, enroll everybody in or put everybody into breakout rooms. So that person who we are going to assign a site would be the group leader and be responsible for that site.
Perfect.
Right? Yeah.
Thanks so much for that, Jared.
All right, no problem.
Right.
So you go ahead. You could go ahead and assign. I would organize the breakout room now. So you go ahead and assign persons, and they would be the group leader responsible for the site. Yeah.
Okay. I think someone else was saying something as well.
Yes, I was just going to say it's a good idea for people to just copy the entire list of sites.
Yeah.
Yes, do that as well. Yes, because you won't have access to this chat when you go into breakout rooms. Yeah.
All right. So in that case, yeah, you could just copy the links, because that's what I was thinking as well. And then we could just, Mr. Mohammed, you could organize the breakout groups. Yeah.
Okay, so is it Akila? Akila, you would be responsible for group 1, right?
Okay.
Alana, group 2. Kalissa, or Kalicia, sorry, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. That'll be group 3. Kathy, group 4, and Darren, our boy, or group 5.
I think Darren might have to leave.
Okay.
In and out, yeah. So you could put somebody else.
Okay, so Gopi Chand, group 5.
And I see Joanne did a great, oh, wow, Joanne, I like this.
Okay, so you should see the option to join. All right, persons are going into their rooms.
Great. I think everyone is in the room. Hazy, Joanne. Should we pause the recording? Just for the 6 minutes, or you're gonna let it? You could let it go. It's only 6 minutes.
Yeah, I put it to pause. I put it to pause already.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I think we're doing good.
It's recording on my end.
Okay. Oh, it's recording on your side?
Yes, it is. It is still, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's okay. If it's just 6 minutes, we could actually edit it out in YouTube, in the YouTube editor. Yeah, this.
Okay. So are we all back? Okay, it's about 1 minute again.
They're not back yet, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, they have a minute before they come back.
This is the minute where participants in breakout room start screaming.
No. They start going in very fast, speaking very fast. So
Closing, y'all. It's closing. Come on. Who's going to present? Fun times.
Okay, is everybody back?
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay, I think they are here.
Go ahead.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. So let's get straight into it. Group 1, take it away. You could tell us what your group found, what portfolio you guys had, and what were the salient elements as per the slide here. Go right ahead, group 1.
Hi, everyone.
I will. Okay.
Sorry. So group 1 had we had to look at Jacqueline Bridge, and we'll do it we'll each do one part. We'll do one part each.
Okay.
So we can start with Yvonne.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I looked at the first part, which was looking at her teaching philosophy, and from going through, what we found is that she is passionate about teaching, and she sees teaching and learning as inextricably linked. So the teacher as a learner and the learner as the teacher. She strives to create encounters with students that are critical, but also interactive and fun. And it's to sort of demystify the whole thing about engineering being very technical. She has student focus. So in her lens, she is has a student-centered approach, and she starts with the end in mind, having a vision of what a successful student will look like and working toward that vision. She seeks to ignite and sustain enthusiasm for learning, but also a desire to create further insights by the learner. Thank you.
Excellent. So you see a lot of what we were talking about. Go ahead, next.
Yeah, hello. I was reading about the teaching responsibilities as she has many responsibilities and project and research supervision, advising to the students in their career, the subject specialty the students have to choose. And that is very important since students start the career. Sometimes there are not have the ideal objects that they want to do in their life. So she guide them, and that is very important. And as well, the teaching methods that she uses, the concept maps, in class design and building projects. As well, she working a lot in the discussion and problem solving and critical thinking skill discussion. That is what I see so far.
Excellent, excellent. Very thorough, by the way. Go ahead, next.
Okay, and for evidence of effective teaching, she looked at it on different levels. She presented like her student averages in the course in terms of results. She also looked at in terms of, she gave some examples of feedback she should have gotten, things like, I like the lecturer's competence, she is an amazing teacher, other things that, some positive feedback that she would have gotten. She also, in terms of effectiveness, to chart her effectiveness, she looked at, she said that she got an award for best lecturer.
There you go.
Best lecturer from the students themselves. From the students themselves. She also spoke of shortcomings that she would have received from feedback and how she dealt with the shortcomings. She spoke about that some of the students mentioned that the course was too intense and that she needed tutorial support, which she addressed. She said that she addressed it later on. And she got some feedback that, these small groups that she implemented made it easier. And, the support and thing that she got. She also spoke of one more thing on effectiveness. She looked at the characteristics of the UWI graduate, those 6 characteristics, 7 characteristics of UWI graduate. And she gave an example of how she would incorporate each in her courses in order to, sharpen those skills in her charges. Yeah. Excellent. So that is how she measured herself, her effectiveness.
Nice. Thank you so much for that, group 1. I'm looking at time. I'm being very mindful of time, even though we asked for a couple more minutes grace. So in that regard, I'll just ask one more group. Let's say group 2, or any group that wants to volunteer to share their what they found. Okay, since no one. Okay,
well, yeah, good afternoon. We are from group 2.
Okay.
We didn't get much time to discuss, but I can give some ideas and then someone can talk about the other 2 points.
Okay.
So what I noticed, she did a variety of different roles. She did things with regards to lectures, the PBLs and the labs, and it was all outlined in a kind of easy way to follow with the use of the tables.
Right.
That's her responsibility. So it was quite easy for me at a glance to just see what it is she was doing and moved on. Now, the philosophy, I liked the opening statement. She said, I have been a student all my life and I've passed and failed with my students. That one time shows me that this is a teacher who's identifying with the students, right? It's not like you're separating yourself, but the fact that you yourself are passing and failing with the students, it gave me one time the idea that this is a person who is like, a team player, but also there with the students and actually actually student-centered is what she used further down. She did a lot of bold points throughout, although they were, they were writing, there were a lot of things bolded and using the bold font. And I think that really drew my attention to kind of getting a grasp of what it is she was mentioning. And she talked about herself and what she was doing. And then in the end, she said she was no more of a teacher, but she became like a friend, right? I am a friend. Right. And I really, it's kind of showing her evolutionary process as a teacher and with her philosophy. And that was something that I appreciated. Someone from the group could talk about the other 2 points.
Okay, I don't want to take up much time because I know we don't have much time, but I wanted to give an overall, like just the whole vibe and feeling that I got about from everything that I read. I got the sense that she is very much passionate about how are my students learning from me? What is it that they are getting from me? And I could tell that she evaluated the perception that she thinks she's giving to the students or emitting to the students versus what the students are actually getting from her. And I get that because it is a philosophy course, yet she's using very, I guess we would say modern or in the times, social media and games and even crossword puzzles to put across. So that was just part of it. But overall, I just get a sense of how focused and passionate she is about connecting with her students.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for that, group 2. And of course, for the sake of time, we wouldn't be able to go through everyone, but I do know that you got to see Marsha's portfolio. So you got some insight, and you also have all the other links, as we see here, that you can also go through as well. So I want to go very quickly into the building of your portfolio. So we're just gonna get to expose you to, well, there are different platforms. Weebly, WordPress, Squarespace, Wix is another one that is fairly new and up and coming. But for today's session, we're going to look specifically at Google Sites. And there are several reasons for that. And I'm going to hand over to Mr. Mohammed now, who's going to show us very quickly how to build your course site, build your ePortfolio site in Google Sites. It's very simple because remember at the beginning we established this. Once you logged into your Gmail or your Google account, you're halfway there. So he's going to take us through very quickly some quick tips and on building our ePortfolio site. Mr. Mohammed?
Okay, so thanks, Justin, Dr. Zephyrin. We all know we are pressed for time, so I'll do a quick run through. I just need for somebody to turn their mic on and let me know if you're seeing my screen creating your ePortfolio with Google Sites.
Yes.
Great. So let's get directly into it. We are going to get an idea of what Google Site really is, and as part of the demonstration, we would look at creating a new folder in Google Drive for the purpose of storing your information or assets and then accessing Google Sites from there. And after that, we would look at actually creating a home page on Google Site. The last thing we would attempt to cover would be sharing and publishing a Google Site. So basically, what is Google Sites? In a short video here, you'll be able to get a good idea of what Google Sites is, but really and truly, Google Sites is a platform which allows you to create a website and be able to share and work together among team members.
Google Sites makes websites and wikis simple, and it's free. Create and publish a new page with just a few clicks. Add info just like you do in a document. Just start typing. And you can insert pictures, videos, or other types of content. Make as many pages as you like, and arrange them as you please. All your info is stored securely, online, in one place. You can make your site public, or private, and control who can edit your site. Getting started is easy, and there are a number of helpful templates. More than just a visual theme, site templates can include site structure, custom page templates, embedded gadgets, and more. So whether you're making a site for business, school, a club, or your family, you spend less time getting set up. Get your site at sites.google.com.
Or an ePortfolio. Yeah. So some tips before you actually start creating your website. We saw it fit to just give you all some tips so that you can take this away when it's time for you to start developing or designing. And the first tip we have here is to plan. Yes, you can look at a number of samples. You already did that today, which is excellent. And you can choose to follow someone else's layout. But a good place to start would be for you to do a rough draft of how you want to lay out your site. What type of images, or select the images you want to include. And if you look to the top of this rough draft, you would notice that I included pages. So I'm seeing here in my rough draft, I want to have 4 pages, inclusive of a home page. I am seeing here that there's a logo, an image, contact form. This is telling me that I need to create a contact form and probably gather some images that I would use to link my social media sites to. Another tip would be to try as best as possible and stay away from using more than 3 fonts, right? Font styles. Selecting the best colors. Now, this is very important. I'll tell you. Yes, Google Sites is equipped with a lot of themes, and you will get excited toggling between all of those themes, but you need to pay attention to the color scheme or the color palette of those themes, and make sure that the theme that you are selecting allows you to effectively relay the message that you are trying to relay, and make sure that there is a good balance between contrast, between the contrast of background and text. You want persons to be able to read clearly. All right. White space is your friend. Don't be afraid to use the white space in Google Sites or any other site builder that you decide to use. All right. Don't make your page clutter. All right. Make it free from clutter, actually. Design with mobile in mind. So one of the good things with Google Sites is that you'll be able to quickly preview do some rapid prototyping, basically, by quickly previewing your development or your page and selecting a phone view, a tablet view, or a desktop view. And also pay attention to how you want your viewer to navigate between pages. All right. So think about your website, set your goal. In this case, we are going to create an ePortfolio. So we have established that. Define your layout, take some time and define your layout, generate a domain name. Just take a minute or two and think about your domain name. That is very important because this is what you are going to give persons to access your website, and you want to make sure that your domain name is free from special characters, numbers, etc. Keep it simple. Gather your content. I'm telling you to gather your content, whether it is text, images, video. Gather your content and store it in a space that you can quickly access it. So let's begin. So we did indicate earlier, before the session started, that we would like for you to log into your Google site. So if you can't follow, I'm rushing through the slides here, the information, so please forgive me. But if you can't follow, it will be really good. So the first step in creating your website basically is storage of assets. So after you've determined your purpose, generated your domain name, gathered some of your content, and defined your layout, you would go to Google Drive. And to do that, you log into Google, you click on the grid to the top right of your screen and select Drive. When you select Drive, you'll be taken to your Drive. And here you can create a new folder. So to create a new folder, in the top left of your page, you would see the Add New button. You click that button and you select Folder. You're creating a new folder. Give the folder a name and drop all your files or upload all the files or assets that you are going to use for your amazing ePortfolio. Once you create that folder and put all the information you want in that folder, you are going now to click that Add New or Plus New button again and hover down to More and select Google Sites. I'm going to show you quickly how to do that. So you click, once you're signed into Google, you will have access to the grid here. And when you click on the grid, you can find Google Drive. Did I pass it? Right. Sorry, I passed it. Yeah. You click on Drive and it will take you to your storage drive. When you do that, you click Add New Folder, give the folder a name and hit Create. So I've already created a folder, so there's no need for me to create a new folder. And when you create your folder, you should see it appearing under the folders list. Make sure you're inside your folder, the new folder that you created. So I created my ePortfolio folder and I have already uploaded images and a couple other folders. Good. Now, once you're inside the new folder that you've created, you're going to click the Add New button to the top left again, scroll down to More, and select Google Sites. Good. So this is what, for those of you who have never ever seen Google Sites before, when you select Google Sites, this is what you will see. This is the editing space. And let's quickly go through the interface. Just get this out of the way. Good. So to the top of your page, the top left of your page, you will see the site title. Now, this site title can be renamed anytime during the design process. And this, when you put your site's name here in this space, it will also be shown in this area, which is called your site title box. And you also have an option to add a logo, as you can see here. So in the top ribbon, you have undo and redo. You can preview. I did mention that you are able to preview while in edit mode. And you also have the option to share a link for other persons to work with you on the site. Now, you will not have access to it right now because you have not published your site. But soon as you publish your site, you will be able to share that link. The other thing you can do is add editors, again, using the editors button here. So there are two ways to actually invite persons to edit with you, by sharing the link and then selecting, giving them editing rights. The other option we would look, the other function we would look at is the settings, the overall settings. This is going to open up the site preferences. And the more option will give you quick access to your site analytics. Good. So in the side panel, so this area here is called the side panel. The side panel is made up of 3 tabs: insert, pages, and themes. So when the insert tab is selected, you can select from a number of elements that you can include on your page. So you can select a text box, you can select text box for a text box to appear on your page, and you can immediately start typing or copying and pasting information into that text box. When you click images, you get the option to embed an image. You have the code option, embed code, and you have quick access to your drive. Layouts now, layouts could be a friend, yes, but I would encourage that you, for the purpose of getting accustomed to the site, if you have no experience, don't use layouts. Just create your, go on the system and start playing around with it and working on the page and create your own layout. Then you'll be able now to choose layouts and edit those layouts. You also have options lower down on the side panel to embed a table of contents. You can embed a Google form, etc. So here now to the top of my screen here, or page, sorry, this area is called the header. So the header contains a background image and a text box or text pane. You can change the background image, and of course you can edit the text. And the last area here, which is very important, it's the body of your page, which is going to contain the majority of your content. Yeah. Again, I apologize for the rushing, but I'm looking at the time. So ideally, if we had time, we would have taken these steps, taken our time to go through these steps, but this is what you can do. You can create your rough draft, and when you have your rough draft, go create a new Google site. Don't select any template, create a new Google site, a new, create from new, give your site a title. And once you give your site a title, it will appear in the site name automatically. And if you feel like creating a logo, which I encourage you to do, brand yourself, yeah, you can upload that logo, and then you can give the home page a title. I will quickly demonstrate that. So I'm on my blank page. It's not entirely blank. And I can give my site a title. I'm just going to put my name. I could type here as well, JVED. And you would notice that the title is appearing here on my site, on my page site title. And I can add a logo. And when I hover in this region, I'm getting the option to add logo. So I click add logo and look at what is happening here now. I am now able to quickly upload a logo from my desktop or flash drive, if that's the case, but I planned ahead. So I'm going to select from my drive my logo, and I can find that in my drive, find that the folder that I created quickly by selecting my drive, my ePortolio. And here I have logo and me. So this is my logo. Great. So I have inserted a logo to the top of my page. And this page, this first page will always be your home page. Now, the other thing I would want to do is probably look at the theme for my header. Yeah. So I kind of like the abstract lines in the background, but I probably want to change the color scheme. If I select the section, the header section, and go to my side panel and click themes, I am now able to play around and select a theme that best represent what I want to achieve for this website. So be careful with your color scheme, your color palette. All right. You also have the option to choose a font style for your theme. I'm going to leave it light, yeah, by default. Let me see, green. Nah, it's not looking good for me. Probably, yeah, try this color. Good. Now, at the same time, we don't have any information in the body of our website. What you can do is create a footer at one time and get it out of the way. So you would have an idea of space when you're working on your page. All right. And your footer does not really and truly need to have too much information on it. I'm just simply going to put my name and the year I created or updated the site if I'm going to do updates. And you would notice whenever you type in a text box, you have text options, editing options. So here I can change the style by selecting the styles option, which is already small text is already selected. So I'm going to leave it as small text because this is the footer I'm working on. And I probably want to align it to the middle of my page. So it's already selected and I want to align it to center. You can change the font style if you want. You have that option. Good. So to come out of footer, you need to click out of the section itself and you would be taken to your page, right? Now I want to name my page. I want to give my page a name. So this is going to be my title for my page. And one thing to note is that the title of your page must be aligned, or the content of your page must, my apologies, your content of your page and the name of your page or title of your page must align. Persons, as soon as they go on your landing page, they must know by the title what is exactly in the body of your website. So I'm going to put welcome. This is my welcome page. And I can now change the style, the text style, to heading, subheading, small text. But in this case, it's a title. So I'm going to use the system predefined text options. And this will help you as you keep consistency within designing your page. Good. Justin, Dr. Zephyrin, how am I doing for time? Could you give me a time check?
Sure. So far, so good.
Okay.
I don't know how much we have again, but I know we're winding down.
Okay, so let me wrap up. Great. So basically, it's really easy and intuitive. This site is very intuitive. If I want to create text, I'm just gonna insert an image and some text in the body of my page, and then we'll close. So I want to insert an image here. I can click images. I can upload or select, but I'm going to use the select option because I already uploaded everything in my Google Drive, and select an image. Good. Not the best of photos, but it's what I have. And when you add your image, you definitely have some options to scale and crop. So crop, if you crop and you don't like how it's looking, you can uncrop. And you also have the option to insert a link or make your image a hyperlink. or delete. Good. Now I want to add some text. I'm just going to click text box. And I can move my text box, change the size of my text box, and move my text box to different sections of my page. So right now, I don't want my text box to be in this area at the bottom of my image. I want I want it to be, let's say, in line. I can hover over the text box and drag it. Don't do me that, right? And here is my text box. I can add some text. Let me just get some text quickly here. Good. Great. So I have some text and I have an image. If you want to upload a YouTube video, you can use the Insert tab and select YouTube. You can search for a YouTube video, or you can upload something directly from your Drive, Google account. So I can select from all these videos here that's associated with my account. Well, in this case, CETL's account. I'm giving you all two questions to ask as I am trying to rush down on this presentation. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to turn on your mic and ask a question regarding inserting, embedding, creating a new page. I can show that quickly. Okay, so I'm just going to create a new page because your portfolio will definitely have more than one page. So by default, your first page will always be your home page, but you do have the option to rename this page by double-clicking or by selecting properties. And good. I'm going to add a new page. Yes, go ahead.
Excuse, what's the difference between a new menu section and a new page?
Okay. So menu section, when I select menu section, done, I have on my page a new menu, and within my menu, I can have multiple pages as well. But for your portfolio, I would discourage that, because you don't want your the viewer to be clicking too much, and you don't want to have too much pages for your portfolio as well. What I read in some of the best practices for website development is that you encourage scroll down, more scrolling rather than clicking. Hope that answered your question.
Thank you, David.
Yeah. Right. I am going to delete.
Javid, when we talk about menu, the menu is what appears at the top stretching across the page, right? That's where it's come there.
Yes.
And if you say that you have a button, the menu, whatever group that you just asked about, that means that you would have a selection, and then under that you have multiple selections.
Yeah.
So you're recommending that that's not done, and we should just have one thing to click on.
Yeah.
For each
Let's look at. I think so. Let's look at this sample that was shared earlier. See what she did? Straight, simple. As a viewer on this page, I know exactly where I need to go to read or to go to other pages. and it's easy. So I don't need to hover, because sometimes persons move quickly. And they may not be aware that when they hover over welcome, there are different links to click on. So try and keep as much as possible straight pages. You know, don't group too many pages. So I'm going to create another page so you can see the menu appearing. Just going to call it page 1, page 2, sorry.
Also, what do you mean by embed?
Oh, no problem. Good. So I'll answer that question shortly. So I've created a new page called page 2, and it's now appearing in my menu. And as one of the tips mentioned earlier is to pay attention to how your site will look on different devices, right? So right now, if I publish my site and I view, or someone is viewing my site on a laptop or desktop, this is what they are going to see. But if they are viewing my site from a phone, this is how it will look. And look at what's happening to the menu here. So on the desktop, the menu, you can see it to the top right. You do have the option to move it. But in a phone now, you have to click the hamburger icon and select the page. Now, if you have multiple pages associated with a page, it can get a bit confusing for some. So you want to keep it as simple as possible. Somebody asked a question earlier on embed. Are you referring to embed in the insert tab?
I was just explaining in the chat.
In the chat? Okay,
yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Zafran. Thank you so much. So I'm going to wrap up. I definitely went over. We all did, but I apologize. The last thing you'd want to do is publish your site. And once you're at a point where you're comfortable and you know your website looking fresh, you're ready to submit this thing to get your award, you click the publish button, right? And it's located to the top right of the website. And when you click that button, you will be taken to a window, or a pop-up window will appear, which is going to give you 3 options. All right, this right. So I had that note here. And in this web address space, this is where you're going to create your domain name. And in this case, I typed Javed-Mohammed, which is not a good practice, but I did it just because Javed Mohammed, or Javed, was taken, and I only did it for the example of this, for this example, for this demonstration. I would stay away from dashes and hyphens if I'm actually creating a portfolio, right? And if you have a custom domain already created, here is where you go to associate this page with that domain. And who can view my site? You can manage that here. Right now it's set to anyone with my link can see my site. And search settings. Now this option tends to scare people. Public, request public search engines to not display my site. You decide, but I'm going to encourage you to leave this unchecked for the purpose of sharing your portfolio in the courses. For your assignment, right, Dr. Zafran and Dr. Hill? Because they may not want to allow other search engines to quickly find their website and everybody could access it. Some persons probably just want to complete their portfolio to submit as part of the program, and so and they're still building on it, and they're not ready, not yet ready.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So I'm at the end. Sorry for the rundown, but did we explain what Google Site is? Yeah, man. Can we create a folder in Google Drive? I think so. And can we create a kinda, you know, and did we explore publishing options? Yeah, man. So in a nutshell, that's it. A quick rundown on using Google Sites to create your ePortfolio. And while I'm here, Dr. Hill, you could probably mention the H5P when you wrap up.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
Thank you, Javed.
So very quickly, as we wrap up, just before we go into Dr. Hill and the H5P session, thank you so much for that, Mr. Mohammed. The UWI Garden Group Teaching Awards, it's a ceremony that we have every other year. This year just happens to be that year that we're having it, the next installment of it. So we could very well have a winner inside here, or a couple winners that we have in our midst. So that award ceremony is scheduled for the 29th of September. All right, we're very excited for it because this year is the first time we're gonna do it virtually. Last year we did the the premium lecture, which was virtual. This year we're gonna do the award ceremony, which is scheduled to be virtual, a virtual event. But for your portfolio to be considered for an award, you will have to submit your link, which is what Mr. Mohammed just showed you, all right, by the 10th of July, 2022. And you submit it to, I think Dr. Hill would probably share the information on and where to submit it, but all you're gonna need is that link. So you don't have to submit a hard copy of all of, a whole bunch of information. You're just gonna submit a link, I think a form, and the information will be forthcoming via marketing and communications and from our media platforms as well. So you're gonna see it over the next couple of weeks. But this session, we just wanted to have with you to give you a sort of almost like a precursory notification. Yeah. So you could start preparing your portfolio, and because we know it's a work in progress. Some of the things that the portfolio would focus on, I mean, there's in the media release, you're gonna see the criteria, but we just wanted to share with you here. It's basically the same things that we covered during this session: teaching effectiveness, personal and professional development, development of the distinctive UWI graduate. We all know what that is about, and the strategic plan and so on for it. Presentation and organization, which Mr. Mohammed spoke about, teaching philosophy and so on. So we look forward to your submissions, and please don't sell yourself short. By all means, submit. And even if things don't work out this time, submit again the following time we're having it. All right, so we encourage all of you to submit. Any questions on anything that we've covered today? I also, as you prepare your questions, sorry, let me just make mention of this. We will also have clinics to further build on what we've covered today. So don't worry if it is that you felt that.
Certainly.
Yeah, that you, that
we're here to help.
It's all planned, that we would have clinics following. This is to whet your appetites, to really almost like a show and tell, and to get you thinking. So subsequent to this session, we're gonna have clinics. Now a clinic could be with like a one-on-one session, or we can have clinics with 1 to 4 or 5 persons. So if you want a colleague that you're comfortable with, you wanna have a clinic with Mr. Mohammed or myself, by all means, you can just request one, and we'll be happy to provide the assistance. All right, any other questions?
Justin, one question from me is, if somebody says, you know what, I don't think I'm ready this year, but I want to start preparing my portfolio for the next time, they could come to clinics as well?
Yes, yes, because there's no time as now to
the present,
yeah, you know.
And And just to say here, I mean, Marcia, you said you did 30 minutes every day, was it?
30 minutes every day for about 2 months.
Right. Right. And some others may want to follow a pattern like that to kind of salami slice it, because certainly it can be a tall order to do rush, because we do as educators, we do know what rush looks like. And certainly we want to do that.
All right. So great. So of course, if you have any questions that might come up later on, by all means, feel free to contact us. Mr. Mohammed and I will be happy to assist as best as we can. All right. And of course, by all means, when you're creating your portfolio, make sure it's you represent yourself. You don't have to sound like Marsha. You don't have to sound like Jacqueline or anybody. Your portfolio is all about you. Let your voice be heard. Let your account of your teaching practice be put forward. Present yourself and have fun with it. Yeah.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Marsha, as well as our guest facilitators.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Mohammed, as well. And thank you for being here with us.
Yes.
Dr. Hill, I think we can hand over to you now.
Okay, I will be very short, and certainly what I want to do is to ensure that you are able to, in a very meaningful way, give us some feedback, some quick feedback. Before I do that, I just want to put in a plug for the H5P session that's slated for the 21st of April. If you notice the presentation that was done by Javed, Mr. Mohammed, was actually done in H5P. And so we talk about student engagement, we talk about using different tools. And so we want to introduce you to a new tool called H5P, built on the HTML5 technology and thinking and approach. And so we certainly want to introduce you to that. And the 21st, so go ahead and register. We're going to put the registration link in the chat room so you can register for that. And certainly we want to do that. While we close, because I don't want to take too much of your time, is if in the chat room you can share your one key takeaway thing from this session. Are you gonna apply? How many of you here are gonna apply? Because we're certainly looking forward to supporting you. You mentioned that the clinics, we saw where you can actually do the clinics with us. We are here to support you, even if it's one. Even if it's one, we will have the session. And at CETL, we don't have well, I shouldn't say we don't have cutoff numbers, but our minimum number is 1. You know, some programs they say because of low enrollment we can't start. No, CETL, we go with 1. Once we have 1, we move. And so I want to thank, in a very special way, I want to thank each and every one who has taken the time out to be here today. And I want to thank you from not the bottom of my heart, from my whole heart, because you have made us happy today, because we have 102 subscribers for our YouTube channel and we have met our outcome. So certainly we want to thank you for that. I'm so happy. I'm finishing the Friday afternoon on a really good high. And this has been, I mean, I don't want to spend more time talking about the entire week, but this has been a tremendous week in terms of the outcomes. I see Dr. Kathy Radix, who was one of our supporters in there from the Learning Cafe. Thank you. And again, I want to say another thank you to Dr. Masir Nathai Balkisoon, and who really, you were great support person for us today. And so certainly want to thank you for that. Still, go ahead, if you have not liked or subscribed to our channel, please go ahead and do that. So thank you so much. I want to thank the members of the team CETL. You know, we did great, and so we just want to say thank you. And you can continue putting your key takeaways in the chat room and we'll capture that. Certainly we want to do that, and thank you so much.
David, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Is Lumi related to the H5P workshop that we're going to be doing?
So here's the answer to that. register for the H5P workshop, and you will
I've already
definitely
done
get
it.
right.
Too late. I've done it already. So it is related to it.
It is.
It
is
is.
related, yeah.
Right.
But
Okay.
it's.
So see you then. See you soon.
Yes.
For
Yes, see
sure.
you.
Looking forward to it.
That's why you were asking earlier,
fine.
right?
Yes, that's what I was asking, Justin.
Yes.
So see you all on that workshop.
I was
Okay,
almost
bye.
really going with that, like, because it was something else. So yes.
If we had prizes to give for this week, I would shout out Dr. Maraj, Rohani Maraj, Ladana Kanhai. We had some people who attended every session, and those two names right now I'm seeing, let me see if it's still if they're still in, but I just want to say thanks to them for attending.
And don't forget the evaluation. We have it in the chat room, so please go ahead and let us know how we can strengthen what we have done well and what we need to do differently. Mr. Mark Garcia, thank you for posting that in the chat room, so we see that there in the chat room. For colleagues, I know it's been a long day, so we really don't want to take too much of your time. We're going to stop the recording, and so those who want to stay on can certainly stay on, and then we will continue from there on. All right?
Have a good afternoon, everyone. And
have a good afternoon.
For being a part of it.
Afternoon. Have a great weekend. Safe one.